$100 billion potential in Venezuelan oil. Junín Block 2, within the Orinoco Belt's Junín area, is located in Las Mercedes Municipality, Guárico State, near Zuata. It is adjacent to the easternmost Boyacá field. Junín 2 contains extra heavy crude API 8 to 10, requiring advanced upgrading. PetroVietnam began operations in 2008 under PetroJunín, focusing on drilling and pipeline planning. Junín 2 field holds 10.5 billion barrels proven reserves, 100 billion post Magna Reserva certification. Upgrading via delayed coking and hydrotreating produces exportable synthetic crude, making it a strategic asset. PetroVietnam's 2008 joint venture with PDVSA, 60% PDVSA, 40% PetroVietnam, targeted Junín Block 2, historically called Zuata. By 2012, over 30 wells were drilled, but production reached only 5,000 barrels per day due to underestimation of horizontal drilling, delayed coking, and steam injection requirements, corresponded by limited water access. Logistical challenges included transporting equipment 220 kilometers from Puerto La Cruz, hindered by the block's remoteness in Guárico. Zuata's small population of 5,000 offered minimal support, unlike Dacion's urban proximity. Financial challenges included Venezuela's economic decline between 2008 and 2015 and global oil price volatility, restricting PetroVietnam's $5 billion investment and limiting infrastructure development. Operations ceased in 2015 due to nationalization under Maduro's consolidation strategy, later than other exits. For example, Repsol's PetroSuata exit in 2012. Planned pipelines to the José Antonio Anzoátegui petrochemical complex remained at the initial stage. Junín Block 2 currently produces 10,000 barrels per day at 30% capacity. A renewed PetroVietnam joint venture aligned with 2019 to 2029 plans targets 120,000 barrels per day by 2029 using $3 billion from Asian investors to drill over 200 wells in 24 to 36 months. Investors are needed to construct 150,000 barrel per day upgrading facilities for delayed coking and hydrotreating. Steam injection and polymer flooding must be implemented. Logistics infrastructure must be developed, including roads and housing, despite Zuata's limited services. This aligns with Venezuela's goal to add 2.09 million barrels per day via Orinoco Belt projects. Junín Block 2 strengthens Venezuela's ties with Asian markets and PetroVietnam's global presence. Its development supports energy security, reduces reliance on sanctioned regions, and aligns with open market strategies. PDVSA and CNPC, Boyacá Block 3. Boyacá 3, part of the Orinoco Belt, is developed through a joint venture led by PDVSA with CNPC, China National Petroleum Corporation, 40% stake. Boyacá 3 targets extra heavy crude, leveraging CNPC's expertise in heavy oil extraction despite sanctions, aligning with Venezuela's absolute productive independence plan. The block's strategic location in Guárico supports China's energy security goals, enhancing Venezuela's OPEC leverage. The Boyacá Block 3, part of the Orinoco Belt, is located at Pedro Sarasa Municipality, Guárico. Boyacá Block 3 is targeted for development through a new joint venture on Petro Independencia S.A., involving PDVSA and CNPC. CNPC's technical and financial support, despite sanctions, is crucial for extracting extra heavy crude. Current production is limited, but the project aims for 125,000 barrels per day by 2029. CNPC has been a major player since the early 2000s, with interests in the Orinoco Belt, including the Boyacá Block 3. Production was scaled back due to sanctions and debt issues. This deal reactivates these efforts, leveraging CNPC's experience in heavy oil projects. The infrastructure timeline of 36 to 48 months for building upgrading facilities and extensively drilling reflects the scale of investment. Infrastructure development, including upgraders, is critical to achieving projected output. The expected 125,000 barrels per day increase within 4 years contributes significantly to Venezuela's production goals. This boost enhances OPEC leverage, potentially demanding a higher quota. The strategic importance lies in restoring production and influencing global energy markets. PDVSA and Rosneft, Junín Block 6. Junín Block 6, located at Independencia Municipality of Anzoátegui State, is developed by PDVSA with Rosneft. The project focuses on extra heavy crude, leveraging Rosneft's experience in challenging environments. Production stalled since the late 2000s due to sanctions is targeted to reach 180,000 barrels per day by 2029. The block's strategic role supports Russia's energy export goals, replacing Western majors and aligning with Venezuela's independence strategy. Upgrader development and logistics improvements are key to success. Rosneft entered Venezuela in the mid-2000s with interests in the Junín Block 6. Operations were suspended due to sanctions, but resumed with limited activity. This deal reactivates these efforts, leveraging Rosneft's experience in heavy oil projects. The infrastructure timeline of 24 to 36 months for constructing, drilling, and processing facilities reflects the need for Russian equipment. The expected 180,000 barrel per day increase within 4 years contributes significantly to Venezuela's production goals. PDVSA and Indian Oil Corporation MPE-3 block. The MPE-3 block, part of the Mariscal Sucre project in the Gulf of Paria, is a joint venture between PDVSA and Indian Oil Corporation of India. Targeting light crude and gas, the block leverages Indian Oil's offshore expertise to achieve 100,000 barrels per day by 2028. The 18 to 24 month timeline for platform and pipelines reflects offshore challenges with oversight from the Situational Monitoring and Supervision Room. The block's proximity to Trinidad and Tobago enhances regional cooperation, supporting Venezuela's light crude export goals. The projected 100,000 barrels per day increase by 2028 significantly boosts Venezuela's production goals, enhancing OPEC leverage and potentially securing a higher quota. PDVSA and ONGC Videsh, Plataforma Deltana, located offshore, is developed by PDVSA with ONGC Videsh of India, targeted for development through a new joint venture or LORAN Sociedad Anónima. Focusing on natural gas and light crude, the block aims for 80,000 barrels per day oil equivalent by 2029. Minimal current production reflects sanctions and underinvestment, but ONGC's offshore capabilities support ambitious targets. The block's strategic location near Caribbean markets enhances export potential, aligning with Venezuela's gas diversification goals. ONGC Videsh entered Venezuela in the early 2000s, with interests in the Plataforma Deltana. Gas production was a focus, but sanctions halted progress. This deal reactivates these efforts, leveraging ONGC Videsh's experience in offshore projects. The infrastructure timeline is 30 to 36 months for constructing offshore infrastructure, including gas processing facilities. PDVSA and Morel & Prom, MBU 5 block. MBU 5 block, operated by Morel & Prom, is in partnership with PDVSA, is located in Monagas state, known for light crude fields of API 35 to 40. Morel & Prom is a French company with a history in Venezuela since 2018. Morel & Prom's operations in Monagas reveal general activities such as gas flaring projects. Current production stands at 2,000 barrels per day, with historical peaks assumed at 5,000 barrels per day. Projected output is 20,000 barrels per day by 2027. MBU 5 block's importance lies in enhancing Venezuela's exploratory capabilities, attracting diverse investors, and aligning with smaller operator strategies, aiming to boost production despite challenges. PDVSA and domestic consortium, Santa Barbara Field. Anzoátegui fields, including Santa Barbara and others, are targeted for development through a new joint venture or existing operations involving PDVSA and a domestic consortium, including Rainpet International Corporation. Rainpet's technical expertise, despite sanctions, is crucial for rehabilitating wells. The deal aims for 150,000 barrels per day within 3 years, fully achievable. Santa Barbara features medium to heavy crude API gravity 15 to 25, while its proximity to existing infrastructure supports rapid scaling. RainPet has focused on well rehabilitation done since the 2000s, particularly in Anzoátegui. Delta Drilling is a Venezuelan company since 1980. Delta Drilling provides drilling services. Its inclusion in the consortium supports operational continuity. Venwell was founded in 1995. Venwell offers engineering and consulting services. Its expertise is vital for infrastructure upgrades. Previous efforts were limited by underinvestment. Santa Barbara deal reactivates these efforts, leveraging local expertise in maintaining infrastructure. The Anzoátegui region's potential for reactivating idle wells makes these fields a strategic asset. The infrastructure timeline of 12 to 18 months for upgrading existing infrastructure reflects the use of local resources. The expected 150,000 barrel per day increase within 3 years contributes significantly to Venezuela's production goals. This boost enhances OPEC leverage, potentially demanding a higher quota. We shall now introduce several additional recoverable fields. La Rosa field is situated at the La Rosa parish of the Cabimas municipality. Zulia State, on the eastern shore of Lake Maracaibo, approximately 5 kilometers from Cabimas city. La Rosa is part of Zulia's Bolivar Coastal Field Complex, operated by PDVSA, targeting conventional oil of API 20 to 30. Discovered in 1917 by Royal Dutch Shell, La Rosa field peaked at 300,000 barrels per day in 1950, making it one of Venezuela's earliest and most productive. The infrastructure includes over 500 wells, a central processing facility capable of handling 400,000 barrels per day, and gas processing plants with water injection systems for enhanced oil recovery. Historical methods like gas lift and thermal recovery were employed, but production declined to 15,000 barrels per day by 2023 due to underinvestment and sanctions since 2019. La Rosa infrastructure operates at 20% capacity. Recovery potential is high, estimated at 100 million barrels, primarily from secondary and tertiary recovery methods like steam injection and polymer flooding. With rehabilitation of existing enhanced oil recovery systems and modern drilling techniques, La Rosa could achieve 50,000 barrels per day by 2031 through secondary recovery techniques aligning with recent recovery efforts in nearby fields like La Salina. Its proximity to Lake Maracaibo supports logistics. El Furrial field is situated in the El Furrial parish of Maturín municipality of Monagas state, a key oil-producing region to eastern Venezuela. This municipality is known for its significant oil reserves and historical production peaks. Discovered in 1986, El Furrial peaked at 800,000 barrels per day in 1997, but production declined to 50,000 barrels per day by 2023 due to underinvestment and sanctions. The infrastructure includes over 2,000 wells and a central processing facility capable of handling 1 million barrels per day, with gas processing plants and water injection systems for enhanced oil recovery. The field also features tertiary recovery methods like steam and polymer flooding, critical for maintaining production from nature reservoirs. El Furrial field's infrastructure deteriorated since the early 2000s due to lack of maintenance and sanctions, with only 25% of wells operational by 2023. El Furrial field remains under PDVSA's control, with no foreign joint ventures permitted. Recovery could involve rehabilitating existing enhanced oil recovery infrastructure and modern drilling techniques. El Furrial's extensive well network and processing facility offer recovery potential, potentially reaching 300,000 barrels per day by 2030 through enhanced oil recovery. Despite sanctions-driven decline, its existing infrastructure supports rapid scaling, making it critical for Venezuela's OPEC influence and global market presence. La Ceiba field is situated in the Guanta municipality of Anzoátegui state, near the Caribbean coast. Initial petroleum activity in Guanta began in 1917 with exploratory drilling by Royal Dutch Shell, marking the early 20th century's oil exploration in the region. Discovered in 1928, La Ceiba peaked at 200,000 barrels per day in 1980, but was abandoned in 2015 due to economic unviability amidst falling oil prices and lack of investment. The infrastructure includes 500 wells and a processing plant capable of handling 250,000 barrels per day with gas processing facilities and water injection systems for enhanced oil recovery. La Ceiba field also featured secondary recovery methods like gas lift, but these have been inactive since abandonment. As of June 11, 2025, the field remains under PDVSA's control with no production and significant infrastructure decay, with only 10% of wells potentially recoverable. Recovery could involve modern drilling technologies and enhanced oil recovery methods, targeting 100,000 barrels per day by 2032, leveraging existing processing capabilities and coastal access for export, enhancing Venezuela's production diversity and market influence. Existing infrastructure supports recovery, diversifying production and market influence. Current production and baseline. As of June 2025, Venezuela's oil production stands at approximately 1 million barrels per day. This figure reflects a recovery from the lows of 500,000 barrels per day in early 2024, driven by limited sanctions, relief, and domestic efforts under the Absolute Productive Independence Plan. The 9 new deals signed on June 7, 2025 inspire rehabilitation of dozens of energy projects nationwide, aiming to significantly boost current output by leveraging international and domestic expertise and investment. Each contract lasts 20 years, with PDVSA holding at least 50% of crude output, usually 60%. The total investment is in excess of $20 billion, financed through crude shipments and includes tax exemptions for partners. This strategy seeks to sustain foreign currency inflows amidst sanctions. Authorized under President Nicolás Maduro's anti-blockade law, these deals bypass National Assembly approval, raising legal questions. Venezuela plans more contracts, reflecting a push for sovereignty, but United States sanctions complicate global trade with ongoing debates on their effectiveness. The Orinoco Belt has 27 blocks. Boyacá has 6 blocks. Junín has 11 blocks. Ayacucho has 6 blocks. And Carabobo has 4 blocks. And we have only covered 7 of those blocks. Including all 27 blocks could double our field count, highlighting a massive economic opportunity for investors, with potential investments exceeding $100 billion and annual revenues around $100 billion as well. Specific evasion tactics: forgery of shipping bills. Venezuelan entities such as PDVSA and its joint ventures have employed sanctions evasion tactics by falsifying shipping bills. For example, a Reuters report details how PDVSA has used falsified invoices to conceal final oil destinations, diverting shipments to non-sanctioned countries such as Turkey and Malaysia. This involves altering documents to show legitimate destinations while oil is transferred offshore through ship-to-ship transfers. These tactics have allowed revenue streams to be maintained despite United States sanctions. The practice of ship-to-ship transfers, as mentioned in Venezuela, PDVSA to install ship-to-ship transfer center offshore has been crucial. PDVSA has facilitated these transfers in areas such as Caquetíos and Los Motijes, increasing costs but reducing oversight. A definitive ELCON study from 2020 estimates that more than 70% of Venezuelan exports have been carried out this way, avoiding direct sanctions. This requires complex logistical coordination, including tankers like Cape Bella 5, and has been effective despite maritime challenges. Implications: these tactics, although illegal under sanctions, highlight the sector's resilience. However, they require transparency and technology to mitigate corruption risks. Blockchain could track shipments, ensuring legality. Evasion tactics for oil exports, logistics, and bills of lading. Venezuela's oil exports of 1,007,200 barrels per day in May 2025 face United States sanctions targeting PDVSA and related entities, aiming to limit the country's revenue. To circumvent these, Venezuela employs complex logistics, often involving petroleum cargo ships and manipulated documentation. Below are detailed tactics with specific examples. Tactic: third-party countries. Description: routes oil through non-sanctioned countries for re-export, masking origin. Examples: Malaysia and China re-export Venezuelan oil, with China buying 450,000 barrels in May 2025. Tactic: amend altered shipping documents. Description: falsify bills of lading to show different ports or exporters. Examples: Bills might claim oil loaded in Trinidad and Tobago instead of Venezuela. Tactic: shell companies. Description: use front companies to obscure ownership and origin registered in lax jurisdictions. Examples: entities like Elemento Ltd and Swiss Oil Trading Sociedad Anónima, sanctioned in 2021, facilitated sales. Tactic: ship-to-ship transfers. Description: transfer oil between vessels at sea to complicate tracking. Examples: reported in 2020, Venezuelan oil transferred to Chinese tankers of Malaysia. Tactic: disabling transponders. Description: turn off AIS to avoid detection, though risky. Examples: ships carrying Venezuelan oil disable transponders routed to United States Treasury reports. Tactic: corruption. Description: bribes facilitate movement without proper documentation. Examples: facilitated by networks involving indicted figures like Alex Nain Saab Moram. Logistics of a petroleum cargo ship journey. A ship loads oil at a Venezuelan port, such as Puerto La Cruz, under a falsified bill of lading claiming origin from, say, Trinidad and Tobago. This document, issued by PDVSA or a shell company, lists a non-sanctioned exporter and port. The ship sails to Malaysia, unloading at a port like Port Klang. Here, the oil is reloaded onto another vessel with a new bill of lading, now showing Malaysian origin, facilitated by intermediaries. Alternatively, at sea, the ship meets another vessel for a ship-to-ship transfer, transferring oil without entering a port, complicating tracking. This is often done in international waters with transponders disabled to avoid detection. The final destination, such as China, receives the oil with documentation showing it as Malaysian or another non-sanctioned origin, ensuring payment in non-United States currencies like yuan. Bills of lading production in evasion. Bills of lading are typically produced by the shipper, for example PDVSA, and carrier, detailing cargo, origin, destination, and parties. In evasion, PDVSA or shell companies issue falsified versions, altering fields like port of loading changed to a non-sanctioned port. Example, Trinidad and Tobago instead of Venezuela. Exporter name listed as a shell company, for example, Swiss Oil Trading Sociedad Anónima, to obscure PDVSA's involvement. Cargo description, sometimes mislabeled to hide its Venezuelan characteristics, though heavy crude properties can be hard to disguise. These documents are often backed by corrupt practices, with bribes ensuring port authorities or shipping agents accept them. The 2021 United States Treasury action against networks like Schlager Business Group highlights such practices, including falsified bills to broker sales. Case studies and recent developments. In 2020, reports indicated Venezuelan oil was transferred to Chinese tankers of Malaysia, with bills of lading altered to show Malaysian origin, enabling sales to China at discounted prices. In 2021, the United States sanctioned entities like Elemento Ltd for facilitating oil sales, noting their use of falsified documents and ship-to-ship transfers, highlighting the international network involved. Impact on OPEC leverage. Venezuela's increased production to 1,800,000, 2,080,000 barrels per day would significantly enhance its leverage within OPEC. Currently, Venezuela's quota is around 800,000 barrels per day, restoring production to 1.8 to 2.1 million barrels per day would reassert influence. Venezuela could demand a higher quota, potentially up to 1.5 million barrels per day, aligning with its historical role as a founding member of OPEC. Stabilized markets. Increased supply could moderate global oil prices, benefiting OPEC's collective strategy, especially amidst tensions with known OPEC producers like the United States. Geopolitical weight. Higher production would strengthen Venezuela's position in negotiations with other OPEC members, potentially Saudi Arabia and Russia, enhancing its bargaining power. The resurgence could also influence OPEC Plus dynamics, as Venezuela's output would counterbalance production cuts by other members, potentially leading to a re-evaluation of quotas and market shares. Natural resources of each country. Below is a detailed breakdown of the natural resources for each of the 5 countries, emphasizing oil and gas due to their reference to energy reserves. Venezuela has 303.3 billion barrels of oil reserves and 19.6 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. Other significant minerals in Venezuela are gold, iron ore, bauxite, and diamonds. Iran features oil reserves of 157.2 billion barrels of oil, and its natural gas reserves are 32.3 trillion cubic meters. Other significant minerals for Iran are coal, chromium, copper, iron ore, lead, manganese, zinc, and sulfur. Russia features 107.8 billion barrels of oil reserves, and its natural gas reserves are 37.4 trillion cubic meters. Other significant minerals for Russia are coal, iron ore, nickel, copper, platinum, aluminum, lead, and zinc. Iraq has 145.0 billion barrels of oil reserves, while its natural gas reserves are 3.5 trillion cubic meters. Other significant minerals for Iraq are phosphates and sulfur. Libya has 48.4 billion barrels of oil reserves, featuring 1.5 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. Other significant minerals for Libya are gypsum, salt, and marble. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves globally at 303.3 billion barrels, with significant natural gas reserves. Let's elaborate on the sanctions imposed by the United States on each of these countries, focusing on those most relevant to the context of energy reserves. Venezuela sanctions overview. The United States has imposed extensive sanctions on Venezuela since 2019, targeting the government of President Nicolás Maduro, PDVSA, the state-owned oil company, and key individuals. These sanctions include blocking property and interests in property of designated persons, prohibiting transactions with certain entities, and restricting the import of Venezuelan oil. In part on energy sector. These sanctions have significantly reduced oil exports from over 2 million barrels per day in 2019 to around 700,000 barrels per day in April 2025, as reported. They aim to limit revenue to the Venezuelan government, affecting PDVSA's ability to maintain infrastructure and attract investment. Legal basis: Executive Orders 13,808, 13,850, and 13,884, among others, form the basis of these sanctions, with the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, overseeing implementation. Iran. Sanctions overview. United States sanctions on Iran have been in place since the 1979 hostage crisis, with intensification under the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaigns. This includes secondary sanctions on entities doing business with Iran, targeting its oil, banking, and shipping sectors. Impact on energy sector. Iran's oil exports have fluctuated, dropping to nearly zero in 2019, but partially recovering to around 1.5 million barrels per day by 2023 due to exemptions and evasion tactics. These sanctions aim to curb Iran's nuclear program and regional influence. Legal basis. The Iran Sanctions Act, Executive Order 13,599, and subsequent measures under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action JCPOA withdrawal. Russia Sanctions Overview. Following the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the United States has imposed multifaceted sanctions on Russia, including energy sector restrictions, financial sanctions, and export controls. Impact on energy sector. Sanctions target Russian energy companies like Gazprom and Rosneft, limiting their access to Western technology and markets. However, Russia has mitigated some impacts by redirecting exports to China and India. Legal basis. Executive Orders 13,660, 13,664, 13,661, and 14,034, along with the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, CAATSA. Syria. Sanctions Overview. The United States has sanctioned Syria since 1979, with significant escalation after the 2011 civil war. These include the Caesar Syria Civilian Protection Act, targeting the Assad regime and its supporters. Impact on energy sector. Syria's oil production has plummeted due to conflict and sanctions, with limited exports. The sanctions aim to isolate the regime economically. Legal basis. Executive Order 13,572 and the Syria Accountability and Lebanese Sovereignty Restoration Act. North Korea. Sanctions Overview. The United States has imposed strict sanctions on North Korea due to its nuclear program and human rights abuses, including bans on most trade and financial information. Impact on energy sector. North Korea's energy sector is minimal, with limited oil reserves and production. Sanctions severely restrict any potential energy trade. Legal basis: Executive Order 13,722 and the North Korea Sanctions and Policy Enhancement Act.